It's 6:59. I think I'm the only Zach member here.
Through the chair, you're live on HCAM TV.
Thank you, Bob. Oh, there's Ron.
And we got Vic too.
Oh, okay. I don't see Vic, but I believe you.
Just signed on.
Okay.
I'm here, Ted.
Wonderful, Vic. Thank you. And we need 5, right? Okay. Seems to be a lot of interest in the meeting. That's good to see.
Do I take credit for my amazing flyer?
You should take all the credit.
Oh.
Keep yourself alive. Keep yourself alive. We need one more committee member.
Mary is signing on now.
Wonderful. And I think Sam will be here. He wrote to me ahead of time, so I assume he'll be here. All right, and I see Mary, which means we have enough to get the meeting going, and it always starts with the script. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body, as well as members of the public, may access the meeting via virtual means. Participants may access the meeting through the remote meeting link as posted on the meeting agenda and through the town's online calendar. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by raising their hand or otherwise signaling their intent to speak. This meeting will be recorded. Please take care to mute your microphone unless you have been recognized by the chair. We will now confirm attendance of members. Please respond with present if you are on the call. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Present.
I am Ted Barker Hook, Chair of the Zoning Advisory Committee, and I am present. Ron Foisey.
Present.
Arnold Cohen. Hopefully coming in. Kristen Borzamuto. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst. Borzamato. No. All right, here we go, Madhu. Madhu Chandrasekhar.
Present.
Hail. Rachel Rawson. Sam Sater. Curtis Smithson. And Vic Prati.
Present.
And Arnold, I think I skipped you. Arnold Cohen. No, maybe I didn't skip him. He's just not here. Okay, but we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which gives us enough to get the meeting going. As I do every week, I'm going to take the last agenda item John gave us and move it to the front. We have 3 sets of minutes to vote on. Oh, wait. And John Gelsich, staff.
Present.
There we go. So what I'd love to do is, was everyone able to read the minutes of October 30th, which is a long time ago, November 15th, almost as long a time ago, and our last meeting, February 15th. Zach, members, people, I see a thumbs up. Great. John, yeah. We can vote on all these in one fell swoop. Yeah?
Yes, unless there are changes that anyone has.
I saw nothing but thumbs up, so I don't think we have changes. So may I get a motion to approve all 3 sets of minutes?
So moved.
Second.
And there's a second, and we'll do a roll call vote. Ted Barker Hook is a yes. Mary Larson Marlowe.
Yes.
Ron Foisey.
Yes.
Madhu.
Yes.
Vic.
Yes.
Did any other members come in? Oh, yes, Sam. Did you hear we're voting on the minutes?
I did, yes. I'm a yes.
All right. And that is unanimous. Looking to check you off, Sam. There you are. Okay, going on to agenda item number 2. It is our many months delayed public forum. We have a very full room. Let me just change my view here on the screen. And members of the public, if you are here to give us some thoughts on what we might be looking at for the summer and into the fall, please indicate so by raising your hand, and I will go through as best as I can that the order of the hands pop up for me. I'm trying to move. Well, I can't do that. Maury Gasser, if you could please introduce yourself and give your address, and then let us know what's on your mind.
Hey, there I am. I'm Maury Gasser, 28 South Mill Street. I'm speaking now as president of the Hopkinton Area Land Trust. And I've got a couple of issues. I sent something in writing. I don't know if that's been distributed around, but there are basically 2 things I'd like to talk about. This is kind of a subset of what I presented a year or 2 ago to Zach relating to OSLPD, LPD bylaw. Because these are very focused, specific things. And the first one is basically, it talks about the fact that the open space in an OSLPD has to be 50% of the property, and within that 50%, no more than 50% can be wetland. That's what the bylaw says.
Right.
The problem so therefore you've got 25% of the property is upland, and up to 50%. Another 25% could be wetland. The problem is, let's say the developer has provided the open space that's 50-50, wetland and upland, and everything's right. But then let's say they want to add an area of wetland to that open space to give the town more open space. Sounds like a good thing. They can't do it without a waiver, because that would create more than 50% wetland in that open space. So I doubt that was the intent of the bylaw. So what I'd like to see is a change in wording that says that the open space must contain at least 25% of the upland portion of the property, and as much wetland as you want, as long as the total open space is at least 50%. So that gives us everything we have today, and it allows the developer to also include additional wetland to that open space. And I think it gives the developer more flexibility, gives the town more open space, and I really don't see any negatives to this. So that's my first item.
Could I hit pause for a second? Okay. John, I don't think that we were mailed what Maury says he sent you. Do you have that? Or
no. So the way that the forum works is that the public gets to input their suggestions, and then when we talk about it, because we're not going to talk, I mean, right. There's so many people and we shouldn't really be talking about these things in detail because that doesn't allow for time for other people. So when we talk about it at a ZAC meeting, I thought it would be more appropriate to get it then so we can talk about the details. This is more just brainstorming.
Okay, so I won't share my screen so you can see it then.
So with what John said in mind, not wanting to get too detailed, are there ZAC members that have clarifying questions on that first item without going into too much detail? I don't see anybody. So great. All right, Maury, what's your next thing?
The next one has to do with the fact that the bylaw right now says that the 3 ways the open space can be dealt with. It can be conveyed to the town, it can be kept by the homeowners association, or it can be donated to a nonprofit conservation organization, the land trust, basically. And then it says, if it's not donated to the town, it has to have a conservation restriction. That means that if the land is given to a land trust, it still needs a conservation restriction, which is really redundant. It leads to a number of strange situations where one land trust has the open space and another land trust has a conservation restriction. And it's kind of needless. And in the cases where HALT has land that other land trusts have CRs on, my observation is they don't really want those CRs. They took them kind of grudgingly because somebody had to take them. HALT has a number of properties that never got a CR on them, that should have had a CR, but since there was no time limit, no CR was ever written, mainly because we couldn't find any organization to take the CR. Since the land trust is dedicated to preserving the property, preserving the open space, the CR is kind of redundant in that case. Furthermore, the fact that the town, if the land is given to the town, it doesn't need a CR, kind of contradicts what we have, for example, in when the town procures land through CPC money. So if the town gets a land through CPC, it has to have a CR on it. But for some reason, it doesn't need a CR if the town gets it through an OSLPD. So I propose a change to that bylaw that says if the land is given to the town or retained by the HOA, then it needs a CR. If it's given to a land trust, it doesn't need a CR. And I should add, CR is not a simple thing. It's an onerous document. It takes a year or 2 or even 3 to get finalized. It's not something developers want to do. And by requiring a CR on the property, it kind of discourages developers from giving it to a land trust, basically, because of that CR requirement. So that's my second issue. And an extension of that is in the case where a CR is required, there's nothing in the bylaw that has a time limit. So that's why HALT has a number of properties that has had them for 20 or more years, and there's no CR, even though the bylaw said there should be a CR. The developer never created a CR. HALT certainly doesn't have a responsibility to write a CR, and there's nobody to give a CR to anyway. So I would propose it to be some kind of time limit on the CR so that it doesn't go on forever and ever and ever. And here's something that I don't have any good ideas for how to establish a time limit. One thing we can do is say that by the time the first building permit is issued, there needs to be at least a draft CR submitted to the state for review, something like that, to at least show that the process has started. And then maybe down the road, to prevent dragging of feet, have some other milestones. I don't have any good ideas there. I would be looking for ideas, but I think there should be a time limit of some sort.
Great. And again, you sent that and the wording of your suggestions to John?
Yes, that's it's a 1.5-page document. I sent it, and it provides a lot of rationale for what I just said.
Beautiful. I don't think I have clarifying questions. Does anybody else on the committee have clarifying questions for Mr. Gasser? If you do, just speak up. Looks like no. Mr. Gasser, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much.
Is there anybody else that's here for the public forum? Maybe this crowd of people is all here for our third agenda item. Are there any ZAC members that would like to add some ideas for us to consider in the coming weeks and months? Go ahead, Ron.
Thank you, Ted. I'd like to throw into discussion for future meetings an adjustment to the accessory dwelling unit bylaw, which is 210-126. We have a very, very tightly worded accessory dwelling bylaw. The section in terms of the size of the ADU was last updated in 2000. And we're maxed out at 800 square feet of development. And, given the size of housing in Hopkinton over the last 10 or 15 years, a separate 800 square foot apartment really doesn't do a lot for increasing the supply of attainable housing units in Hopkinton without further development. So I'd just like to keep the ADU as it is and just think about bumping the square footage maybe up to 1,200, leaving everything else the same.
800. Just trying to keep up on my notes. Yeah, you and I, Ron, have been on the ZAC for a while, and this issue comes up every few years, and maybe it's time to have another discussion. I think the last time it came up a year or two ago, I was voiced to say, we just talked about that, but now it's been a couple more years, so sure. Again, we're not going to dive deep into that discussion. Does anybody have any quick thoughts on accessory dwelling units? Looks like no. Great. Thank you, Ron. Any other ZAC members with agenda items for the coming year? Did I see something, Mary? No, I thought as I clicked, I thought maybe I saw a hand flash. All right, well, I then have two newish ones and then one that just drags and drags, but is still near and dear to my heart. Without going into too much detail, the near and dear to my heart is a continuing effort to try something with tree protection. As you know, I was working on it hopefully you'll remember, I was working on it in the fall, but MBTA Communities appropriately took over our whole fall. Trying to wrap my head around how to come up with numbers, that's really where we fell apart the last time we tried this, is numbers that we and the planning board could defend as far as percentage of lot area of tree removal, things like that. Continues to be my biggest stumbling block. But I'd like to propose that that's something that we continue to keep on our radar, and I will continue to try to drive that bus. I do feel strongly that there's a lot of desire in the town for some tree protection that we don't have right now. My other two items, and then John, I think that they both can fall within ZAC, but let me know if either one of these is completely outside of our world. One of them is ever since maybe my second year on the Zoning Advisory Committee, and that was a while ago, I hear frustration from the Design Review Board, which is under the Planning Board umbrella, which is why I think we might have a place here, that the Design Review Board has virtually no teeth, that they're merely a recommending body without a lot of ability to enforce what they recommend. I know I've talked to Gary Trendle about this same issue. I believe that he's recommended that we take a look at whether we can help Design Review Board have a little bit more muscle behind it. So John, is that something that ZAC could wrestle with, or is that outside of our scope?
No, it's something that ZAC can look into, specifically towards stuff that involves zoning, like site plan, signs. Mm-hmm. That's basically what Design Review Board reviews. So I see it as relevant to ZAC. Okay.
So I'd like to propose that as something we consider. And then the other, I think, is also through site plan review. I would love to have a discussion about whether our site plan review can include dealing with upland invasives in development of lots. I'm on the Conservation Commission, and we certainly do lots and lots and lots with wetlands and buffer area invasives. But right now we have no checks or balances on dealing with upland invasives. I think that there are site plan review on what can be planted. I'm interested in what's found on a lot if it is undeveloped, and if they find invasives on the lot. I think bad practice is simply digging them up and throwing them somewhere, because that's perfect for spreading invasives. So that was my other, if I were a member of the public today, that would be my other public forum thought. John, does that fit in to something we can do through site plan review?
Potentially, we can look into it.
Yeah, okay, good. I'm happy to hear I wasn't way off base. Is there anything else for this agenda item from any member of the public or any member of the committee? I'm just clicking through to make sure that somehow someone's not madly waving their hands. I don't see anybody, but boy, we have a lot of people for this meeting. All right, well, I think I know what agenda item the whole crowd is here for. Unless there's anything else with the public forum and setting some ideas for the coming year, last chance. Okay, we go on to agenda item number 3, which is, in my reordered agenda, 6870 South Street, Hayward Street rezoning proposal. And there is Scott Richardson. Scott, welcome back to the Zoning Advisory Committee. I want to let you know that your email to us arrived after 6, and I didn't see it until 6:40 or something. Mm-hmm. I know it's not totally thick, the email you gave us, but I barely had any chance to look at it. And I would imagine some members of ZAC would say the same. So with that, I welcome Scott to the table.
Sure. Well, thanks, Ted. And as a recovering ZAC member, I appreciate all the work that you do and continue to do to help shape zoning for the betterment of the town. I'm here tonight as a local architect working with Jim Marguerite, excuse me, on the potential development for his site there at 66-70 South Street. Jim, did you want to say hi?
Yeah, hello everyone. I appreciate everyone's time to listen to Scott and the information that we're going to provide. Some further clarification that was kind of a gray area last year when we presented this proposal.
So can I share my screen, Ted?
Yeah, I think John has total control. I never want control of the screen.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Let me know when it's ready.
You should be all set now.
Thanks. Everybody see my screen?
There it is, yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to run through a few Q&As that we seem to have gotten over the past year that have been relayed to me from Jim and from others.
I'm sorry to say, I can't see your screen.
Oh.
I'm not sure about other members. Yeah.
Can people see my notes here?
Yeah. Yeah, we can see. I can see.
Okay, then it may be a problem with me. Go ahead. Thank you.
Sure. So again, some of the discussion was the use of the building and accessibility and what is really happening there. So Jim bought the property with the intent of constructing an office building to be used for his offices, for his company to basically bring together basically two and a half locations to one location. So it's proposed at 24,000 square feet. And will provide about 80 parking spaces for his 50 plus or minus office workers and visitors. As some of you may know, this is the only parcel that is not zoned industrial or business on South Street. You basically have a whole full swath of kind of the industrial zone all along South Street and abutting 495. But for some reason, And well, variety of reasons, as we know, when EMC purchased the 52 South Street property, this parcel and these parcels, or these three parcels that front on South Street, remained residential. So it's kind of an unusual situation, again, to have, kind of prime commercial property fronting a commercial street, still zoned residential. So there's confusion about what's going to be going here. It's basically office space for Jim's offices only. There are no concrete related vehicles allowed on the property. All of his concrete operations are in Hopedale, and basically that's where vehicles come and go to the various sites that he works on throughout Massachusetts. It'll be an owner-occupied building for their use, and there certainly would be local job opportunities available for the future as well. So will there be concrete trucks accessing the building and the area roads? The answer is no. Well, other than when the building is under construction, just like any construction that's going on and has just recently been completed on South Street for Project Just Because, new headquarters and so on. But basically the occupants of the building will be office users. Will there be any access to Hayward Street? The answer is no. All cars will access and egress from South Street only. How will the building be buffered from the neighbors? So we're proposing an earthen berm with plantings along portions of Hayward Street and all along the rear of the property, shielding the neighbors and the residential portions of Hayward Street. All parking lot lighting will be dark sky compliant and will not shed light on any other adjacent property. And significant landscaping is proposed all along the perimeter. So there's also the question about the small parcels that show up right here. And I'll get to it. I have another map that I'll share, but right here that are adjacent to Pine Grove Lane, which is an abandoned road. And the intent there is, since those front on Hayward Street, that Jim would be donating those to the Open Space Committee. These properties, including Pine Grove Lane, which is abandoned, total about a little over half an acre. So the estimated contribution to the town's commercial tax base is about $75,000 in annual property tax once completed. A fixed asset tax and excise tax is estimated about $25,000 annually. And of course, the residual spending by employees and visitors to the office building will be an added benefit to local businesses, primarily and logically, Co-Restaurant and Dunkin' Donuts, obviously. So also the owner is open to committing to a development limitation agreement, having this site restricted to only office use. I think there was some feedback at the last meeting relative to future uses on the site. And if in fact the neighbors deemed that any restaurant use or retail use or any other use other than office was not desirable, he would be open to committing to and signing off on a development limitation agreement that goes along with the property. So the other positive aspect, we think, as part of the local Chamber of Commerce, is the project will provide commercial space, adding to the commercial tax base, and not adding any additional residential housing units that could further impact the school population. Did you want me to take any questions on these, Ted, or move to the site plan?
Why don't you give your whole presentation first, Scott?
Okay. So basically just some context, again, as you come up South Street, you know that you get to the intersection here and you have Co. and Dunkin' Donuts on the corner. This is, again, an empty lot. We have the new Project Just Because and other facilities here. We have 80 South Street that theoretically is going to get a new tenant there soon. And then the various other buildings along South Street, as well as Berry Controls. It sits back here. Further along, obviously, we have the large EMC complexes on both sides of South Street. And then heading back down towards West Main Street, we're all familiar with the buildings here on the left as you come up South Street. Price Chopper, the office building here at on South, 42 and 52 South Street, EMC's building, which I think has recently been sold, and 52 South Street that again had been sold in the recent past. So we are proposing and still proposing a building that is has about an 8,000 square foot footprint. It's 80 by 100. For some context, this is 100 feet long. The connector and Dunkin' Donuts building is about 160 feet long. So we have a building that we feel is in context with the neighborhood and not overwhelming the neighborhood. Again, I'm sorry that this is a little somewhat hard to read, but in general, the concept is similar to the previous site plan. We're entering and exiting in this one driveway right here. We enter our parking lot. We have full access around the building, and all the parking, again, is around the perimeter of the building. There is no exit or access onto Hayward. We also did eliminate this row of parking here that basically would have cars pulling in this way, which would have some impact on lighting, headlights shining this way. So all the parking is up against the building here. We have just the driveway around the building. We also have eliminated the parking at the corner here, in that sometimes splayed parking on a curve is somewhat difficult to maneuver, and we felt that also this could be a primary area for landscaping and announcement of the project. Basically, we're proposing a berm that could be anywhere from 6, 7, 8 feet tall, an earthen berm, and then with some landscaping above that would be a fairly opaque landscaping area. It could incorporate a solid fence too, if that's of preference. Obviously, there's really nothing back here as far as residential. The closest neighbor is 400 or 500 feet away here. We're about 120 feet away from this first neighbor. And this light-colored area is the property that is to the west of the abandoned road here that would be part of the donation to the town for whatever use they deem appropriate, whether it just stays natural, whether it turns into a small park, would be up to the town, the open space committee in town. I think that's kind of the bulk of it, if you will. Just again, trying to clarify the use of the building, the limited access into the site, the advantages of, again, finally closing the gap here on South Street so that we have commercial or industrial property all along South Street. And again, not proposing this as an industrial use, which again can bring other types of uses that would not be, I think, desirable on this particular lot. So, Jim, any other thoughts or comments before we dive into questions?
No, I think you covered it all, Scott. I did notice someone posed the question. They were looking for the location of Audiello Drive. If you could just point that out on your screen.
That's right here.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
So here's what I propose we do. We'll take questions from the Zoning Advisory Committee first, and then we'll open it up to the public. Scott, I have a few questions. I think you've mostly answered some of them, but I just want to be clear anyway. First of all, could you quick bullet list what is different between this proposal and what we heard at town meeting, if anything? Or is this just more carefully defined than the town meeting proposal was?
Yeah, the major changes are, obviously, we've eliminated the access to Hayward. We have eliminated a whole row of parking here, created more green space, and really defined this buffer here, and also clearly defined the donation land, if you will. Those are really the most significant changes, and also the commitment from Jim that if a specific limitation agreement with the town to say this will only and forever be an office building, he's open to do that.
How does, I don't know the answer to this question at all. How does a limitation agreement work? Is that an agreement with the planning board? Is that with?
I believe it's mostly with the select board, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But John could elaborate on that.
So, I mean, it would depend on what the agreement is and how it would be enforced of who I guess it would be with.
Mm-hmm. And again, it could be something that travels with the title on the property as well. So that could be worked out, you know, as far as what is the legal definitions that we're trying to impose based again on, say, maybe some other input from the neighbors, and what makes sense for the developer and for the town, and how do you then, you know, embody that in an agreement.
Okay. A couple questions. You say,
sorry to interrupt, Ted, through the chair.
No, please.
I'm seeing a lot of people posting comments in the chat, and I don't think that's an appropriate way to do that because we're not necessarily monitoring the chat. So I would suggest if anyone has a question or a comment to make it through the chair.
I'm glad you said that, John. I also saw that and I didn't know whether to address it or not. So thank you.
Vivek here. I need to recuse myself from this particular topic. Does that, I just want to understand how does that work?
Well, I think it doesn't have to be formal even, Vic. You can just choose not to be a part of the discussion.
I think I need, John, last discussion, what we had, he said we have to, I have to officially recuse from this topic, being direct impacted to the one of the impacted parties on this proposal. So I just want to make sure.
Okay,
I think participant as a private citizen, right?
And I defer to John always, but I think given that we don't make any final decisions on anything, if this had gotten to the, or if this goes to the planning board, Vic, then clearly there, a recusal makes some sense. But I think that you can voluntarily step out of the discussion here. John, am I missing something?
Yeah, so we suggested if Vikasith wants to recuse himself, just state that he's recusing himself and then not participate in the conversation.
Okay. All right, I got a few more before I see your hand, Sam. I'm not ignoring you. You say, Scott, that there will be no concrete trucks. Are there any other trucks? Is there storage proposed on the property where there'd be large kind of box trucks driving in with stuff?
No, any, well, again, the trucks that you'd see are, again, right now, Jim's part of his office is up at 239 South Street, where our offices are. And so, yeah, there are some Marguerite pickup trucks for his workers, but okay. any large trucks, any trucks related to concrete installation activities all come out of the Hopedale facility. Jim, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, all of the heavy equipment, pump trucks, material delivery trucks, all come out of Hopedale. I have 2 warehouses in Hopedale, and that's where all the trucking comes out of. This facility would only be a professional office staff of estimators, project managers, accounting, and safety department. And they all drive either pickup trucks or just regular cars. So there will be no trucks, no storage, no containers, just office only.
Great, thank you. Another thing I jotted down, it looks like on the map that there's green fully on Hayward Street. Nonetheless, I wanted to ask, is there any access or egress for emergency vehicles on Hayward? Is that a part of the design at all?
No, there's not. Again, this is a fairly small building. We need to obviously finalize the, make sure that the fire trucks can make a route all the way around the building and exit. There'll probably be some rounding of some of the curbs. But the intent is to basically utilize this entrance and exit for all traffic, having it pulled away from the lighted intersection. And again, we have better visibility up and down the street from this location. So again, obviously the turning radius for emergency vehicles would be, again, if this moves forward, that would all be worked out during that process.
And in your design professional opinion, you don't see that there'd be a problem to make sure that a fire truck can get around without entering through Hayward?
No, I do not see a problem with that.
Okay. My last question, can you talk a little bit, I know back in your days on Zach, we talked about it. Could you talk a little bit about dark sky compliant? And I'm going to tell you why I ask. I live right near the middle school, and we were assured when they put in the turf field that all of the lights are going to be aiming down, and we in the neighborhood won't know they exist. And what's been true for that field is any day we have overcast, the entire neighborhood is lit up with the lights of the turf field, because there are some lights that actually shoot up. I don't know what they're for, but they do. And the entire neighborhood there was one night I could read a book at 9:30 p.m. without a light from the turf field lighting. So can you talk a little bit about what dark sky compliant means?
Yeah.
And whether the neighborhood should feel safe with such regulation?
Well, that's kind of in your bylaws, but basically we have luxury of, actually, this is an office parking lot. We're not lighting a ball field. So probably the heights of our poles are going to be anywhere from 12 to 15 feet. And basically just lighting the driveway and the parking areas for our building. We would not have any building mounted lighting shining out. And again, these fixtures have a very sharp cutoff so that there's no light trespass beyond the property line.
Okay.
So that's what that means. I think some of us are a little astounded lately with some of the additional new lighting that's been put on 25, 35, and 45, which again, if they were going to go in front of planning board today, wouldn't quite cut the mustard. But anyway, so, and again, that's all vetted, during that planning process. But again, it's a bit different story when you're starting to light ball fields, because the lights are much taller, have a wider range. Again, we'd be having much shorter poles for our parking lot lights.
How is the Dunkin' Donuts co-lit? Would it be a similar nighttime impact? I haven't been to Co in a long time. So
yeah, well, I was there the other night. The parking lot is adequately lit. I don't think it's overlit, but this neighbor may have some other ideas. But again, that's kind of historical lighting. That's an interesting question. The question is the lighting here or even at 80 South Street a problem for these neighbors specifically? So.
Okay, those are the questions I have for now. Sam, you've been patient. Thank you.
Oh, no, thanks. All right, I got a few questions, and I wasn't part of the first time this went through, so I apologize if any of this is redundant. The first question is actually regarding the voting. So this was voted on already at town meeting. So does this mean anything for this updated proposal that we need to take into consideration? Or is it because it's an updated proposal, it just goes through the same sort of motions as the last time it did?
With regard to town meeting or with regard to our discussions?
Right. The fact that the town already voted this down, at least the initial proposal, minus the delta that has changed. What does that mean for us? If it means anything at all.
I don't know that it means anything. John, I'm going to throw to you in a moment. I do know sometimes a proposal has been brought to the Zoning Advisory Committee, and we decided that was just decided at town meeting. That's not something we're going to take up right now. So we could choose to say this is, already been decided recently. We could choose to say there have been changes to this proposal. The last one didn't go through the Zoning Advisory Committee at all. So this is really the first stab at it in our area. John, do you have other thoughts to Sam's question?
Yeah, so this is Zach. So there's really no decision through here. It's kind of just a discussion forum, and this is where zoning goes to get fleshed out before you send it to the planning board. So if the question is, does this have any impact on Zach's proceedings? No. Just talking about it here does not mean that it's in contradiction to the law in place or that it's going to go to town meeting again. If it were to go to town meeting, there are avenues that it can still go to town meeting in Massachusetts law. So if you want to get into that conversation, we can get into a different time. But if we're just talking about Zach, then no, it does not have any impact on our proceedings.
Yeah, I'm only talking about Zach. Thank you. That helps.
And then, Sam, before I go to your next question, for the benefit of everybody else in the room, just to make sure people know what the Zoning Advisory Committee does and does not do, we are a group put together by the Planning Board who are asked to look at specific issues in depth and recommend to the Planning Board our thoughts on those issues. We don't have final vote on anything except should we pass our recommendation to the Planning Board. That's our only role here. So if we did decide to talk about this property, and if we did decide to make a proposal to the Planning Board, a recommendation to the Planning Board, then thered be a whole nother round of meetings before the Planning Board voted to approve. And in this case, the Planning Board, the most they can do, I believe, John, is give an up or down vote for town meeting. The Planning Board can't decide to rezone a property. That's a town meeting discussion. So this is the initial restart of a very long process. John, is there anything else to throw in for members of the public that might not be clear?
Nope, I think you got it all.
Okay, great. Sam, do you have more?
Yeah, and feel free to stop me if you want to go to someone else. But my next one is actually, I only bring up this specific example because it was brought up in the proposal, which is the no construction trucks. But I think in general, though, and this is obviously not to doubt any one person's words, but I'm curious, once it's under the zoning, there's no way to enforce what actually drives through there or not, right? And if it is shared, if that office, right now or in the future, if it is shared by someone else or rented to someone else or sold to someone else, there's no way to actually enforce anything in terms of what trucks go into that parking lot or drive by that parking lot or anything like that. Is that a fair statement?
Sam, when you said construction truck, did you mean concrete truck?
Concrete trucks. Sorry, concrete trucks. Yeah.
Scott?
I guess I can take a stab at it if I think I understand the question. Basically, as an office building, you're typically going to have office users here, insurance companies, professional services, architects, insurance, whatever. So basically the vehicles they would be driving, and they currently drive to where they are now, are their day-to-day transportation vehicles, whether they're pickup trucks, whether they're vans, whether they're, regular vehicles. So I think the only thing that kind of somewhat dictates what kind of vehicles people drive to anything on South Street is the zoning. So basically, the rural business zoning allows retail stores, offices, banks, retail businesses, restaurants, and not too much else. So anybody that has that type of office or retail or restaurant would pretty much be driving the applicable vehicle that they own to and from that business, to either work there or to shop there or do business there. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, it does. And I think it was just, again, because I wasn't familiar with the original proposal. So I was, since we focused on whether there would be concrete trucks are there or not, I just wanted to be clear on that. Technically, the zoning is what dictates, and it doesn't dictate the type of vehicle, but we can assume what type of vehicles would likely be there. Right. So, and I think right. That's my question. Thank you. The one other question I had, Ted, if you don't mind.
No, please.
Is regarding the open space piece, which would be donated. Would that be excluded from the zoning change technically? Like, would it be?
Yes.
Would the plan be to I guess I'm trying to figure out what.
Yeah, the intent is that property would remain the residential zone. That's correct.
Okay, yeah. So whether open space accepts it or not, or what happens with it later, the zoning change is only to that front lot that's on South Street.
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's it for me, Ted.
And that front lot is actually 3 or 4 lots right now?
It's actually 5.
5?
Yes.
Okay. Are there other questions from the Zoning Advisory Committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please, Arnold.
I wasn't around the last time. I guess the town meeting didn't approve it. Maybe you needed to get a 2/3 vote. Is there any issue here about it being spot zoning? Is that something that ever came up, or is that a concern that zoning one parcel for just one particular person? And I will say, that I from what I've heard anyway, and I haven't heard anything to the contrary, seems to me that the town needs this kind of development. It seems like the building might be vacant now, and to get the tax revenue, it seems to me that that's a plus for the town. But what about that spot zoning? Is that
so a couple things, and then I'm going to ask John to talk about spot zoning because I fear I'll misspeak. Number one, there is no building right there. I think there's nothing there but trees and shrubs. Is that right, Scott?
Correct. Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Number two, and maybe John, you might help me remember, or somebody else in the room. I think now that I think about it, it was this property, the rezoning wasn't even voted on at town meeting. It might have been pulled before no, you're saying it was voted on, John?
No,
it was voted on. So the petitioner was not present, I think, assuming it was going to be pulled. And because they weren't present to withdraw or ask to pass over, town meeting voted to move forward with the vote. And I believe it was voted down.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense to me. So John, can you talk about spot zoning, define spot zoning, why there is sometimes concern about such things?
Spot zone, I don't know if I can speak to why there's concern about it. It's usually because it's not done in the most appropriate ways, I guess. It singles out certain parcels for zoning that doesn't really necessarily work in that area. It's not, I can't really describe it well on the spot. But I doubt this would be considered spot zoning because I believe that it is being proposed to be zoned the same as one of the adjacent properties. So it would just be expanding an existing zoning district in that area.
So Co is rural business, not industrial?
Yeah. Correct.
Okay.
If you can see, if I'm still sharing, I think I am.
Yes.
Yeah. Co is rural business. The rest of South Street is industrial. And then this was rezoned quite a few years ago for business use for the Price Chopper Plaza and other activities there.
Okay.
So spot zoning would be as if one of those parcels in the industrial district was rezoned agricultural. Like it's not an extension of an existing or adjacent zoning district. It would be one parcel of one owner zoned a completely different district. If that clarifies what spot zoning is.
Okay. Arnold, does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, I think that's probably correct. But what's being said in spot zoning is something, I was on a planning board where I used to live for maybe 15 years or so, but I still don't completely understand spot zoning, but I'm inclined to think that it probably not an issue here.
Okay. Are there any other zoning advisory committee members with questions at this point? No. So, what was there a committee member? No. So when we open it up to the public here in just a moment, if you would please state your name and your address, and then feel free to ask questions. We'd like to refrain from discussion back and forth. So at the risk of sounding too formal, if comments could be made through the chair, if you have questions for Scott, then I can try to moderate the discussion a bit. At the top of my page is Manisha, perhaps?
So, hi everyone. This is Manisha, and I live at 99 Old Town Road.
What's your last name, please?
Manisha Deswal.
John, do you need a spelling?
Yeah, it is Deswal.
Okay, I think John's caught up.
Okay, so my question is, this Hayward Street comparatively very narrow, and our kids get picked up very early for school. And when 80 extra car, and I'm saying this number 80 because we are told that there are 80 parking spots that are being considered. So what are measures that you're taking to kind of accommodating that to the main red light or the traffic? We also have a very heavy traffic, entering and exiting the Dunkin' Donuts space. This will also call for early pickup, because if it's a huge traffic, then kids have to, today if they are getting picked up at 7:10, it will be 6:50 a.m. or 7 a.m. And in winters, it's going to cause a lot of problem. This neighborhood doesn't have proper walkways, and traffic is a huge issue already. That morning, getting out of the street, making sure that you don't hurt anybody when entering or exiting Dunkin' Donuts. So what are the measures that you have taken?
Scott?
Where are kids picked up at the end of Hayward Street? Where are the kids picked up for the bus?
Yeah, there are multiple stops on the Hayward Street where kids get.
But not at the I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's not at the intersection, but when there is extra traffic, this will lead to kind of, the bus cannot reach on time, and everything is done in a manner that they have to, they have to volunteer for the early pickup. So it will definitely impact in coming years that, that our kids will have to wake up early in winters, and, they are anyway coming late from clubs and all. And my son is in high school, damn tired, coming from school at 4:30 p.m., going for classes, and early, you again have to wake up early and go for those clubs and all. So I really want this walkways and this traffic thing to be considered when you are planning this. I'm totally against this. When owner bought this particular property, he knew that it's residential, right? So I don't know for what reasons or commercial reasons you have come up with this, but traffic is a big issue here. So I really would like you to consider, what are the ways and means that you are considering that how this traffic management is going to take place, and make sure that there are no accidents and nobody gets hurt. Because
Scott, I imagine you guys have not done a traffic study of any kind at this early stage, but would that be part of going through the planning board if you guys
if in fact we march down the path that this is rezoned, then we'd go through the typical planning board process with all of the requirements for approvals, landscaping, lighting, traffic study, stormwater management, and everything related to that. I guess for those of us who have lived through the EMC days when there was 4,000 people working on this street, we find the traffic to be pretty nice right now. But it's all it's all relative.
Yeah, so I'll welcome you morning 7:15 a.m. and see maybe those days are gone. Traffic is not very nice these days.
Sure. Well, there's always an increase. And again, there's been a couple of new projects that have been built on South Street, and some of the empty buildings have fortunately been occupied by some really great life sciences companies. So again, any traffic, that's why, again, the initial thinking is to maintain the entrance as far from the controlled intersection as possible, so that you have good sight lines both ways. And again, anybody coming to this building, unless they live down here, is going to be coming up or down South Street.
And that is a controlled, I'm sorry, Scott.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to reiterate, that is a controlled intersection. That's a stoplight intersection, not even a flasher, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Amy. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have one more question. Will there be a clause that owner cannot resell this property because we will, once it passes this, then we will have no control on whom he sells this property to and all that. So how town is going to kind of take care of that thing, that everything that we are saying no to or they are agreeing to, this will still be under, effect?
I think I could answer some of that. What would certainly, if this zoning change was made, and that's many, many steps away, but if it were, the zoning would stay regardless of who the owner of the property is, unless the new owner petitioned for a rezoning, and they would have to go through the same very long process. This is being proposed as rural business. It is true that right now rural business allows restaurants like Co. and Dunkin' Donuts, allows retail, but part of the proposal is perhaps putting together a development limitation agreement. And Mr. Richardson said that would be tied to the property regardless of owner. Am I right about that last bit, Scott?
Yes.
So that would limit, regardless of who the owner is, what they could do with the property.
Okay. Thanks.
Amy, you're welcome.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amy Groves, 2 College Street, and I'm interested in paper roads. I want to know more about them, especially this one. Does this paper road on paper run through between these 2 proposed lots, or is it part of what would become the lot for the concrete company? Who owns it, and could it be included in the gift to open space?
Well, I'll start. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just said I love that question, Scott.
Well, I'll start with the last part first, because yes, the street is actually right here. And again, it's abandoned. Jim does own it. And it would be part of the donation of this property to the Open Space Committee.
Okay.
The history of the street, I have no idea.
Does that answer your question, Amy?
It does. It would be part of the donation. So yeah, that does help me understand it. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes, John.
I missed Amy's address.
Oh, Amy, sorry.
Oh, I thought I said 2 College Street. I'm sorry.
You did. I just missed it.
Yeah, College.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike C., welcome to the discussion.
Hi, Mike Cavadon for Cielo Drive. At the town meeting, in terms of moving forward with the proposal, it was worded that should we move forward with the proposal, and it was voted on unanimously, yes, we should move forward with the proposal. And then it was saying, should this be rezoned? And it was voted unanimously at town meeting, no to rezone this property. So we've already been through this. We've already had all these conversations. And if you look at this picture, the building next to it, 52 South Street, is for sale. The land across from it, in front of the concrete slab, that's for sale. If you look at the building diagonal to it, that's CGI, that's for sale. So the reason why he bought this land is because it's zoned residential, and it would be cheaper for him to encroach on our neighborhood and build a building here instead of purchasing one of these other buildings or doing something else. There's tons of available space all up and down South Street. He's doing this to save money. Now, where this building is, there used to be houses there. So this is the definition of zoning creep. There used to be houses along South Street, and there used to be houses on that side of the street on Haywood Street. So this whole thing not only used to be zoned residential, it used to have houses on it. So the reason why we're so against this is we want the woods or houses there. If you look at the new houses, the 3 new houses on behind the KO restaurant, behind Dunkin' Donuts, those 3 houses there on Haywood Street, they're a wonderful addition to our neighborhood. It makes it feel like it's more of a neighborhood. So if there was any sort of houses there or even zoning, whatever it is for the low-income folks, it would be a great addition to our neighborhood. Putting an office building in our neighborhood is not what we want. We've just been through all of this. We've been through all of these meetings. We just did this with these folks. So when you guys say, you know, have you looked into lighting? Have you looked into sidewalks? We've already had all of these conversations, and it was voted on unanimously. It was unanimous because these folks didn't show up because they knew they were going to lose. It was voted on unanimously not to rezone this at a recent town meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Sam, I see your hand up again. I'm going to stay with the public for now, if that's okay. Rustem, you're up next.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, sorry. My name is Rustem. Last name is Rafikov. I'm 35 Haywood Street, just right across almost the proposal.
Could I slow you down? I'm trying to help John with minutes. Could you give us your last name and spell it out, please?
Last name is Rafikov, and the address is 35 Haywood Street.
35 Haywood. Good. All right. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. The question is how, I mean, that development agreement or whatever would come with the rezoning would be enforced. You're referring to some town board or committee that would enforce in the future, right? So, but basically on the history, what we know that the EMC will bought those lands, and that was on the planning board of that time. And it was an obligation for EMC to be able to build. And EMC was able to build 52 South Street, and they bought out the other lots to create a buffer zone. And we know that, and we definitely have that document. And after that, probably it will be some verbal agreement or some other agreement that also was in place, and that which does not work now. How we can make sure that it could work in the future, the new one? I mean, a new agreement. That is a question.
I think that's a great question that I don't have the answer to. Scott, can you help out?
So are you talking about if this moved forward, any limitation of use agreement that would go along with the property? Is that what you're asking, Rustam?
Yes, but because obviously there was another agreement between EMC and the town as well. So EMC was able to build 52 South Street.
Yeah, I think, again, that legal portion of this would need to be vetted further if, in fact, this moves down the path that Ted has talked about. But I believe that there are legal mechanisms to, again, have as part of a development agreement if it's if it's agreed to by both parties, both obviously the town, whether it's a planning board or board of selectmen, and a developer. Does that answer your question?
I mean, it doesn't answer completely because from the history we know that were done before, it doesn't work. We don't know the way it was done before, but it seems that we create another such situation that in the future, after, not right now probably, but after 10, 15 years, it will change again and everybody would forget that. And document would be lost in remote archive and something like this. So this is the big concern.
Yeah. Again, if you're
Mr. Chair, you know,
Sure, Arnold.
yes, I mean, there could be some kind of a agreement that would be recorded in the registry of deeds that would restrict the use of the land. I mean, I guess that's the way they would do it, and that would give you protection because you know, it'd be right.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody from then on would be subject to it. Any future owners.
Yes, I think that is potentially the answer to that question.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Parker. I think you're muted, Parker.
Parker, you're muted.
I believe Manisha had their hand up before me, respectfully.
I think Manisha's was the first to speak.
She was the
I
first?
don't know
Okay,
if she
thank
has
you.
a second question or just hasn't lowered her hand.
Thank you for the time. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak and voice my opposition to this plan. I think I understand, you know, from a development perspective, that residents in Hopkinton want to see growth. And we want to see commercial industry come in and be able to reduce our property tax liability and contribute
Wait, I'm
to
sorry,
the overall.
Parker. I don't know if you gave us an address.
Oh, you're right. 3 Osceola. Thank you very much.
Sure. Sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine. And I think that what we've heard here today is a, you know, well-intentioned plan by, you know, folks wanting to contribute to, you know, the town. However, I feel that in the spirit of what is this community that we live in Lake Masconock, that this flies in the face of not only the history, but also the planning board and a proposal that 3 times residents had voted down the founding of EMC when EMC promised to have a buffer zone between our neighborhood and the campus itself. From in 2012, when EMC wanted to build a parking lot and residents opposed, you know, additional growth, you know, within adjacent parcels, again in town meeting, you know, last year. And so now we find ourselves again at a crossroads where, you know, a developer, though well-intentioned, has maybe found themselves in a tough spot, but there were already multiple adjacent lots that were open to be either purchased or built upon that weren't actioned on. The fact is that this is one of 2 entrances to our resident. And while I understand, Mr. Richardson, you're of the opinion that the traffic will only, you know, go across south. The fact is EMS stated at town meeting that there would have to be some sort of egress on Hayward because the left turn onto South Street was too onerous and dangerous. So without any enforcement mechanisms as part of this proposal, all we're getting today is lip service. And what we've also heard recently too, residents in Lake Masconock have been promised another road to be built into our community, which is not included in this proposal. Residents of Lake Masconock have been told that there have been promises like parking lots being built, which aren't part of this proposal. And in fact, Representative purporting to be from Marguerite have been making promises all over the board that aren't part of this proposal. So you have to forgive me if I'm skeptical of the substance of this proposal, because we've heard a lot of talk, but the only action that we've seen so far is in direct contradiction to the will of the people, which thrice in the last 35 years have voted against development adjacent or onto this property. And so we ask you, Mr. Marguerite, just from the bottom of our heart, you wouldn't want this at the corner of Westcott at your entrance to your neighborhood, and we don't want this at ours. Please simply vote. Please simply sell the whole property to open space. Do the right thing and be a good neighbor to us. And we're more than happy to help you with, you know, trying to get a proposal passed for an adjacent lot on Strout Street. That was part of the master plan to be zoned for industrial or for use as this. Really appreciate your time. No questions.
Okay. Even without questions, would you like to respond, Mr. Marguerite or Scott Richardson? Or do you want to just let that lie?
Yeah, I don't have any comment. No comment.
Okay. I don't know if it's Jamie or Jaime.
It's Jamie.
Hi, Jamie.
My name's Jamie Gonsalves from 92 Downey Street. Former member of the planning board for many years. My comment is, we've seen the plans, we've seen the how they want to lay out the building and the egress and all that, but this seems to me they're putting the cart before the horse. These are all questions and things that get discussed and flushed out at the planning board at site plan review process, not during zoning discussions. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't know if you're asking me.
Through the chair, if somebody could answer that question, that would be great. This has been an ongoing issue, and I understand what Mr. Marguerite wants to do. But again, I think we need to take a look at what the process is and how he's making a lot of assumptions. He's making a lot of promises regarding this agreement that he wants to have with the select board. Who would enforce it? How would it be enforced? There's a lot of questions that go into that. And again, my thought process is the town needs to figure out if this is the appropriate zone, the industrial zone or rural business zone for that parcel. That's the only thing that really should be discussed at this point.
Okay. And I think that is the overarching question at this first stage of a multiple stage discussion.
We're seeing building plans, we're seeing parking lot layouts, we're seeing where driveways are going to go, we're seeing numbers of cars, these are all things that get discussed and fleshed out at the planning board site plan review process. So that, again, cart before the horse is my comment.
Okay. I agree. They all have to get discussed, and nothing that's in front of us is a thorough official proposal. It is a sketch of the idea that they have. And I, for one, at this stage, trying to decide whether this is something we do want to recommend to the planning board or not. I appreciate the little bit of detail that we're getting. I think it makes it easier to understand what the applicant is asking for. But obviously, all of those questions would have to be fine-tuned and much more detailed plans laid, and the emergency, the police, and the fire would have to look at it. Yes, you're right. All of that comes down the road in a much finer detail than we're getting here. But I, for one, I am happy with being told that we had planned to have no enter or exit onto Hayward Street. If they can't come up with that, then that would be a bridge down the road that the planning board could wrestle with if we chose to recommend this to the planning board.
Mm-hmm.
So, Vic, you're confusing me now because now your hand is up.
Right, Ted, through the chair. I'm just talking as a private citizen, not as a member of the board. So as a public, this one. So my name is Vikas Tripathi. I stay at 33 Hayward Street, for the record.
Hey, honey.
And, my question is more two parts of
it.
Hold on a sec. Please, if you are not being asked to speak, could you mute your microphones? Thank you. Vic, go ahead.
So first is that, on the school bus. So right now the bus stops at my house. And if I remember it correctly, last time when this discussion happened, the bus stop needs to be changed for the 3 houses. There's some kind of, a safety zone which needs to be met is what my understanding. But that's one thing which puts us in this one. And second, the road is very narrow, as specifically said. It's going to be very tricky for us with people driving in early in the morning to take the Dunkin' Donuts, and with this traffic and the additional traffic adding to people taking left to this property from the Stroud Street and right. So it's going to be like accidents are waiting to happen. That's one. Second is that I just want to ask, maybe this is John or somebody can help me out to understand, is that if at all we require to push this to a special town meeting to buy this property as a historical one, what would be the process for that?
John?
So your question kind of confused me a little bit. To buy it as a historical property or just to buy the property?
Zone it as a historical property, and can the town buy it? And if we push for it, does this needs to be pushed as a special town meeting, or can we still put a citizens petition as part of the upcoming town meeting?
For the annual town meeting you're talking about?
Yes.
You'd have to talk to the town clerk about the citizens petition deadlines for town meeting. I am not the expert on that. So you'd have to talk to them and see what the procedure is for that. I mean, it's not zoned historical or really any, I guess the way that the lot is set up, it doesn't really carry any special permissions or requirements. It would just be purchasing the lot, but if the owner doesn't want to sell it, you'd have to do it by eminent domain, which is a whole separate process. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Is that it, Vic?
Yes.
Okay. Reba?
Hi, Reba Pennell, Pennell for the record, at 83 Downey Street. So more of just a comment for the ZAC members, committee members who are here on the call. As a member of somebody who lives here near Lake Maspinock, my concern really has to do with the wildlife that's in the area, and wanting to protect that as much as possible. I'm against, and so is my husband, against having this rezoned for industrial or business use, because of the wildlife as well as light pollution in this area. As you can see, there's a lot of residential neighborhoods here. And I don't think these are new concerns. I think these have been brought up at other meetings where this has been discussed, but I wanted to make sure that it was said on the record that these are reasons that I would ask the zoning committee not to make this recommendation to the planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael.
Hi, my name is Michael Riley. I'm at 201 West Main Street. A couple of things. One is, I know it certainly is a better plan than was originally proposed. However, I am absolutely against it. And there's two things that I really have things, because I do believe, even though there's no turn in from Haywood, I still believe, I live on West Main Street. I see it every day coming up. A shortcut to save some of that traffic would be to go up through the back roads down into Haywood, where the roads are super narrow and where there are school buses picking up and things. So I think it would certainly alleviate some of the traffic issues by not having any pull in there, but it wouldn't eliminate all of them because of people trying to avoid West Main Street traffic. My other concern is that, and a woman brought it up earlier, there are several, and I guess through the chair, the question is, why did this person buy, Ms. Marguerite, buy this property? I'm in real estate, and why would you buy a property without the contingency of getting it approval? Or looking at some of the empty properties that are on South Street, because the neighborhood is obviously not welcoming this with the, we could still get the tax revenue, we could still get other things, but he chose to buy something that he would have to change the zoning, and he avoided some of the already open buildings on South Street so he could have access, maybe wider drives, something. So I guess it's a question, because you brought it up several times during our discussions last year when this was up front. I had that question. Why was those properties weren't looked at, and why did you go after something without a contingency?
Mr. Marguerite, would you care to answer, or would you like to let that sit?
Well, we did pursue a couple of the open buildings that were available, but they're 10, 15, 20 times larger than what we actually need. We'd be proposing 24,000 square feet. Some of those buildings are approaching 200,000 square feet. And we're not looking to be in the real estate business of renting out office space, having tenants. I just want a headquarters for my company. And I'm not sure if this got mentioned recently, but about 70% of our staff that would be in this building already travels up and down South Street every day now to go to 239. So there's about close to 30 people at 239 South now anyway that travel up and down South Street. So we would be adding approximately another 15 or so from the Hopedale office to join the folks over at South Street. So as far as the traffic concerns, the traffic has already been on South Street for 7 or 8 years going to 239 South. And I think I have one employee I can think of that would be traveling in down West Main Street from, say, the Upton area. Everybody else travels from 495, either coming from the north, the south, or the east. So it's 495 to West Main up South Street. So there'd be no office traffic using Downey or using Hayward.
Okay, well, thank you. Through the chair, I appreciate his response. Thank you.
You're welcome. I see Parker, you're back. Is there anybody but would like to get in that has not spoken? No? All right, Parker, go ahead.
Yeah, I realized 3 Osceola Drive, Parker had 3 Osceola Drive. I realized that I forgot one other environmental concern that needs to be mentioned. The lake community in and of itself wasn't originally intended to be, a residential zone. And we have already challenges with NPS, non-particulate soluble runoff and, runoff challenges that we're working through. And we've heard of part of this plan that there haven't been a traffic plan analysis, there haven't been a stormwater drain analysis, there haven't been, a bevy of different analysis to look at what the impact is going to be on the lake. And the Lake Maspinock Association has been quite clear that, we're currently experiencing some challenges with, pollutants within our water. And I just fail to, believe that having additional land and usage that's taking away from, overall groundwater penetration to help mitigate some of the, water that we're experiencing can otherwise only lead to, more runoff in the lake and more pollution into, what is supposed to be, crystal clear watershed and some of the water that we all drink around, as part of our well water systems, of city water here. So it's just another, consideration for, the board today as well to, listen to the will of the people that 3 times have said that we do not want this recommendation to move forward. Listen to the potential environmental impacts. I feel like the traffic analysis is moot. This is an entrance to a neighborhood. It's one of 2 entrances. It was historically zoned residential. It should remain residential. And, appreciate your time.
Sure. And for committee members, if you don't know the area, it is a pretty steep downhill from South Street down to the lake. Some of it's really very dramatically steep when you get close to the water there. There's a little tracing. Thank you. Are there any other comments from the public or from the committee? Seeing none. So here's what I think our next steps are, Zach, is to make this an agenda item at our next meeting, to think about everything we heard tonight and have a discussion. I would imagine we probably, for that discussion, be inviting Mr. Richardson back, Mr. Marguerite back, and of course the public will be invited to join too. I would say before we depart, Zach, that we remind ourselves from time to time that issues of zoning demand long-term thinking in addition to short-term thinking. I think often we get focused on a very short-term goal or result, but zoning is a long-term process. And when it comes to this proposal, it might be worth keeping that in mind as we go forward. Before I look for a motion, well, no, I don't want to look for a motion to adjourn. I want to look for future meeting times. But are there any other thoughts or comments on the Hayward Street South Street agenda item? Yes, Scott, why don't you go ahead?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to the committee and to the neighbors and everybody else that had comments and observations. And again, thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you for coming. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. What I'd love to do is talk about our next meetings. What I'd like to propose, John, remind me when this term ends again. I can never remember if it's July, August, September, early.
I believe it's July 31st.
July 31st, and right now it's early March. What I'd like to propose is that we aim to meet roughly once a month to the committee, if that sounds okay, through the summer. And maybe we can propose a couple dates for April and May before we walk away today. If we were to go a month out, John, do you happen to have a calendar open in front of you? Is there something the first week of April? That we
Planning board, are we looking to exclusively meet on Mondays?
For whatever reason, Mondays and Wednesdays seem to always be where Zach lives in my years on the committee. So I'm open to either of those days.
Monday the 1st, the planning board has a meeting. It looks like there is nothing on Monday the 8th, but I don't know if that is a holiday. I'm not seeing it as a holiday.
I feel like Patriots Day would be the next week, maybe.
Patriots Day, I believe, is...
Yeah, the week of the 14th is when the Patriots Day, I think.
Right, okay.
Okay, so, okay. Yeah, so it looks like the 8th, April 8th is open, and it looks like April 22nd is open, though I suspect planning board will move their April 15th meeting to the 22nd. So 22nd might not be open. However, the 29th is open.
I like Monday, April 8th. Zach members, there's a thumbs up. That looks pretty good. Can we book that one, John?
Yep.
For our next meeting, an agenda item will certainly be this proposal, but then we can also kind of chew on some of the other ideas we threw out. John, you and I can figure out how to do that, I guess. Then looking to the first week of May. And by the way, Ron, if we go early May, I shouldn't be under a huge grading crunch yet. If we go mid to late May, I'm in deep trouble and it might be your meeting.
Go early.
So the first week in May is town meeting.
Okay.
May 6th. And then it looks like May 13th is open. Planning board has a meeting on May 20th. And then it looks, May 27th is Memorial Day. So it looks like May 13th is open.
That's probably early enough for me, Ron. I got double thumbs up from Ron there. Okay, so let's aim for that one, John. Sounds good. Okay. Does anybody else have anything else before we look for a motion to close? All right. Then I'm looking for that motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
And?
Second.
Great. Where's my attendance for the roll call vote? Sorry, everybody. Here it is. All right. On the motion to close the meeting, Mary, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Arnold?
Yes.
Madhu?
Yes.
Sam?
Yes.
And Vic?
Yes.
And Ted is also a yes. Thank you, everybody, for a good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.